Well, welcome back to another Flashback review. And to nobody's surprise, if you have listened to the last review I had with the Honeymooners, you know this was coming. I'm going to talk about Honeymooners the movie, which came out in 2005. And yet, I'm just going to lay it right here. There's really nothing much to talk about. Most of my arguments about what made the Honeymooners so unique, so special, such a lasting impact in the television world, it's really been said, and it pretty much put a stamp on why this movie, which had none of the charm, none of what made the Honeymooners so special, worth even mentioning. But I have to mention it because it is a link to something that I hold very dear to me, as well as a lot of people hold dear to me. And I'm just going to give you my feeling as to why this movie was an utter disaster from day one. I might as well start with my first hearing about the Honeymooners movie in the late 90s because it was an idea that was floating around then. It was an announcement. I remember being in my room with my television. I just finished playing Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and the news was coming on. I watched the 10 o'clock news before I went to bed. And there was two major announcements that was done that week. One, Dan Aykroyd wanted to do a Blues Brothers 2, which I find very ridiculous considering that one of the heart and souls of the Blues Brothers, John Belushi, had passed away, but he wanted to do it, and many people who they talked to in the news wasn't all that thrilled either. But that was being thrown around. A few days later, it was talk about a possible Honeymooners movie, and the two original stars of the movie that they wanted to play in was Daniel Stern and John Goodman. Now, when I heard those two actors' name, I said, okay, this can work because one, I think Daniel Stern can play Norton pretty well. If you've seen his comedy, it really does fit. Especially if you've seen Home Alone, if you've seen him in the first two Home Alones, it fit well for what Ed Norton is. And for the record, I think Daniel Stern does not give enough credit for his more serious roles, especially doing the voiceover of the Wonder Years. So I can feel he can command that role and put his own spin to it. The same thing with John Goodman. John Goodman has that look, not the mention look, but the feel of playing Ralph Cramden. He may not be Ralph Cramden. That's something I did not want him to be, but he can make it his own and give his own little take on that particular character. However, something else came to mind, and that is again, with all the episodes that I have seen, that I know I've seen, can he actually bring justice to a very, very classic TV show? I've already seen what they did to Leave the Beaver, and I wasn't impressed. Dennis the Menace, even though I actually kind of like what they did with the overall movie, it still wasn't enough to keep people's interest. And needless to say, with the Honeymooners, I felt it was doomed to fail just on the grounds that nobody wanted to see the Honeymooners movie because the TV show is still gripped in our lives, even today, as it's still being shown as reruns. However, I think apparently the people who wanted to put the Honeymooners into the big screen also felt that way because no sooner did they make that announcement, you didn't hear anything ever again about the movie, and for me, I just forgot about it. I just said, all right, well, they must have changed their mind. There's no point of even thinking about it any further. Jump back to 2005, I see A New Food by Cedric Entertainer, and to me, for Cedric, he was not, out of all the people who was in the Kings of Comedy, he was not doing well in terms of being the lead role in films. A lot of films didn't do well commercially or critically, and he was trying to do something that would give him more notoriety. I think the only film that he actually gotten good praise for, and it really wasn't his film, it was more John Travolta, was Be Cool. But other than that, he didn't really have, his movies didn't have that staying power as the others have done. The others from the Kings of Comedy actually went on to have very, very good careers, Steve Harvey being the main one. And when I see this film, and first of all, I'm asking myself what comedy he's with, because he's with Gabriel Union and Mark Epps. So okay, I'm kind of curious what he's doing now. Now you got me interested to see what's going on, because now you got another comedian who has been on in Fridays and other films and even in stand-up, and you have Gabrielle Union, a well-known female black actress, in this film. So I sat back and I watched commercials to see what movie they're trying to do, and then it hit me that this, when they said that the Honeymooners, my initial was utter shocked. Along with a lot of people who saw that commercial, they were shocked that they went this route with the Honeymooners. Now, I'm just gonna throw it on the record. I didn't, for the most part, the actors. I don't blame the actors for this movie. I'm not gonna blame even whitewashing for this movie. I don't look at that as a serious thing unless there's based on an actual historical figure. This is just, these are fictional characters, and so my concern was more, can they pull off these characters? Can they bring justice to the character? And as much as I will say that Cedric wasn't terrible in this movie, neither is most of the characters, with probably the exception of Trixie. I can't even get the woman's name who played Trixie, but I was not impressed with her acting at all. And there really wasn't much to do, and I think that would actually work better for that character. I really felt there was more about the adaptation of the script than anything else. Keep in mind, the idea of the Honeymooners was actually saved by a couple of people. One of them happens to be Cedric the Entertainer, so he actually did push as to get this film done after it was kept on the shelf and nobody really mentioned it. But I kind of wish he would have actually done more research as to the character, as to what the Honeymooners really truly stood for, because the film pretty much was just like I said before in my second half of the Honeymoon review. They only took one aspect of the show, and that was not really the major important aspect of the show, and that was the Get Rich Quick scheme. Here's the gist of it. It was Ralph Cramden was trying to do different things to get money, to be wealthy. There was a house involved. You had this shady broker or whatever the hell he was. I don't remember too much about his role. That's how forgettable he was. But Alice wanted to get this house. He wanted to save up for this house. And here's this guy who's basically stopping him from getting this house. She had some of the money to go through it, but Ralph, who's so into his get rich quick scheme, has blown it. One, on a race on a dog, and two, a train, which he bought without any tracks because he felt the train would be a perfect tourist thing to go around the city. And needless to say, this is all the gist of the film. This was the main purpose of the film throughout almost all the segment. There is one scene that I actually did like. It was the scene as how Ralph Cramden and Alice have actually met. I thought that scene was actually pretty good. But after that, it just went downhill because although they made some changes in the movie, for instance, they're not as poor, or maybe they pretty much well-to-do with the job that Ralph is working, because he's not with the Gotham City Bus Company. It's not the 1930s and 50s. It's actually more to what the show, to our time. Put it that way. It's more modern. Alice and Trixie, they work. They work for a living. I believe they were maids in this film. Their apartment is not not the slums. They're living pretty okay. They may not be rich, but they're living okay. They still have the arguments, but you see at the time to time they do care for each other. So there is some things they actually made. Some changes which I approve. If you're going to do a remake, retelling, you got to make some changes, especially with the time. Cedric the Entertainer in an interview felt, and I agree with him, that some of the stuff that they have shown on TV, where he's saying to the moon, Alice, and making verbal threats, won't fly well with today's audience. He's right. In that aspect, they probably won't fly well to the audience, and he probably himself wouldn't feel comfortable saying that to his fellow characters. With that being said, this is one of the reasons why sometimes it's best to leave a particular franchise in its original form without ever having to disturb it. and this is a perfect example because even though they changed a lot of stuff, there were other stuff they did not change or did not fail to ask himself what made the honeymoon special. Again, this was all about the get rich quick things, and that was it. I really can't tell you anything else other than the fact that in the end, they made up. In the end, he sold the train for far less than what it's worth, and in the end, he ended up almost strangling Norton because the guy who he sold it to um, had a train that was worth millions of dollars, and he didn't even know about it, but it was too late. So it's just a lot of stuff that other stuff was unmemorable. It was just no memory that I can actually give you about this film, other than the fact is that even the arguments felt fake, even the confrontations felt forced, and nothing proved that than the mother of Alice Crandon. And this is something that I can't help but laugh at sometimes because every person I've seen this film with had the exact same reaction. It's when Ralph and the mother are in the confrontation, and there's a famous scene in The Honeymooners where Ralph Craner said, "One day you're gonna push me too far," and the mother comes back with a cheap shot saying, "The only thing you can pull is a bulldozer," basically saying about Ralph Craner's weight. The problem is that everybody looked at the mother and said, "You're fat too. What are you talking about?" Every time that scene comes up, that's the first thing they always say after that one scene. That's not always a good thing to say. I mean, it's and I'm laughing at that scene because the people in the back of every time that comes on says the exact same thing. There's no changes up that. "You're fat too. What are you talking about?" So these are the kind of things that happen. But most importantly about this movie, and let's just keep it real here, is that what made the Honeymooners of the TV show so identifiable, so much investment with the people who was watching it, is because when we saw it, we understood what was going on. We understood the struggles that were going on. I saw this movie. I didn't understand what Ralph Craner was trying to do. Why he was trying to get rich quick scheme. He's working in the MTA for peace sakes. To tell me he's not making money is kind of hard to buy into. If he just saves it, he probably would have no problem with that. So there's a lot of stuff that was there, and plus the movie didn't it didn't translate well. They didn't have anything to work on other than some notable mentionings from the show that we should be watching in the first place. I will say this though, I was kind of surprised that I actually liked it. John Leguizamo's character very well. I actually thought I was not. But this is the second time he actually surprised me. The first time was Spawn, and I felt that he actually stole the show playing that little minion guy, which name escapes me. But in this one, he was surprised me more because I actually wanted to see him on screen. To me, he saved this from being a total zero star, in my opinion. But that was it. I didn't care about Marquette's performance. I didn't really care about Cedric Entertainment's performance, and I kind of felt bad for Cedric Entertainment because I think that in all his heart was in the right place. I didn't think for the most part the acting was terrible. It wasn't great. It definitely didn't leave little to be desired for, but it wasn't terrible. It's just there was nothing to work on in that script. Nothing. You can tell there was no effort in terms of at least coming close to giving us something that we can latch onto and say, yeah, this is actually pretty good. It's surprisingly pretty good. And the fact that it already had people angry to the fact that it was an all-out black cast was, again, that was not my main concern. My main concern was, do they have a good script to work with? And they didn't. They just didn't. There was no good comedy relief at all. I did not laugh for the majority of this movie, and the only time I did laugh is when we had, this everybody basically poking fun of the fact that the mother is talking about Ralph's weight when she herself is just about the same size, if not even about a few pounds more than Ralph is. So you have that situation, but again, it's just a film that was not necessary. It was an unnecessary sequel, and I kind of wish they would have left us alone. I really did wish they could have left us alone. I felt that they wasted their time. This film was a huge failure, both critically, commercially. A lot of people who were diehard Honeymooners fans who gave it a shot left the theater just disgusted. People who wasn't even Honeymooners fans just basically lashed out, and word of mouth got back quick, and this film fell flat. It really fell flat. Um, Now, it doesn't mean all was lost for the actors. A few nominations was given to Gabrielle Union for her performance stylist, and Cedric Entertainer was also nominated with the Black Image Awards. And I have no problem with that. There's an award. Some people consider that was a good performance, and I don't have a problem with it. They was nominated. That's fine. But to me, this film didn't need to be made the way it was made. I was curious if John Goodman, which technically he did play Ralph Crandon, which, in case you don't know, he the Flintstones. I think I mentioned it before. Is actually was modeled after the Honeymooners. So, in many ways, he did play Ralph Crandon, and just in a different medium. But to me, in terms of this, I felt it was best to left it alone, and they didn't leave it alone. And unfortunately, this didn't help Cedric Entertainer's career in terms of his movie roles. Now, didn't tell him to quit. He's actually in a film now known as Haunted House 2. But judging from the ratings that film is getting, I best just not to say too much about that film for the time being. And he's actually hosting. Everybody seemed to like him as the host of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So he's still going. He's still moving. I'm kind of glad he is because he's a good guy. And he is trying. But to me, I kind of wish he picked a different vehicle than the Honeymooners, because if at least make sure the script was match what they was trying to accomplish. On a scale of 1 to 4, I'm giving it a half a star. And again, that half a star pretty much goes to the dog, who, in my opinion, was kind of interesting to see. I actually thought the dog was kind of cute. I like the racing scene where he saw that little trinket that Norton had. He ran right to him. But most importantly, it was John Leguizamo who saved this film from being zero. I think John Leguizamo surprised the hell out of me in this film. I actually liked him in this movie. The only saving grace I have in this movie. Take it for what it's worth. But to me, everything else, not mad at the actors. They tried. It looked like they tried to put their all, but they was just nothing. They was working on empty. They was just working on empty. You may disagree, as usual. Leave your comments below. Let me know what you felt about it. I'd like to hear what you have to say. But until then, J77 saying take care, be safe. I'll talk to you soon.